You greedy mother. So me and Suge, I done finally found my mob tie contract. Got a lawyer to look over it, but a lot of lawyers, like they don't really want to fuck with it. They fuck with it, but they don't really want to fuck with it. I got a couple people that done reached out to me, and I just sent it to them, and I still don't trust this shit a whole lot.
So the whole situation really started spiraling once Finesse2Tymes finally stopped keeping everything behind closed doors and started speaking openly about how trapped he felt in that mob tie situation. From the way he explained it, he feels like the contract with J. Prince Jr., J. Prince Sr. rap a lot, and that entire side turned into something completely different than what he originally believed he was signing up for. And now the relationship looks beyond repair because every few days there's another post, another live stream, another indirect message floating around online. At this point, it don't even feel like regular label drama anymore. It feels personal. What makes the situation crazier is the fact that Finesse keeps saying the issue was never just about music. According to him, it became about ownership control, loyalty, and understanding paperwork he admits he wasn't fully educated on at the time. That's why people started noticing he was streaming more and building direct fan engagement online. Folks believe he's trying to create his own independent bag now instead of depending on the label structure. Because once artists start talking publicly about wanting freedom and ownership, you already know trust behind the scenes is basically gone. Then things took another wild turn when Finesse started using AI tools like ChatGPT Live on stream, trying to understand parts of his contract in real time. And honestly, that alone tells you how frustrated he probably feels. Imagine being deep into a major music deal and publicly asking AI to explain possible loopholes because you feel stuck. That clip instantly went viral because people were shocked watching a rapper sit there asking questions like, can this deal even be breached? And is there any way out the artist didn't get proper legal advice? The internet immediately locked in after that. As they kept reading through possible contract language, the conversation got darker and darker. They started talking about advances, jewelry, cash, private jets, trucks, and all the expensive perks artists receive when signing deals. But then came the reality check. Everything ain't really free, according to what they were reading. All of that can eventually get counted against the artist financially through recoupment, meaning the label can later argue, you already got paid. That's the part that opened a lot of people's eyes because fans see luxury online, but don't realize how much it may actually become debt attached to the contract later. Then they got into assignment clauses, and that's where Finesse looked genuinely frustrated. Because from the way it was explained, labels can sometimes transfer deals to different companies while the artist still remains locked into the agreement. So basically ownership changes, executives change, the business changes, but the artist still can't escape the paperwork. Soon as they explained that part, you could hear the tone shift completely. Finesse started realizing just how deep contracts can really go once distribution and long-term obligations kick in officially. And that distribution part is where things apparently got ugly. The AI breakdown basically explained that once music starts getting commercially released through real distribution systems, certain escape routes disappear automatically, meaning once the machine officially activates, contracts can extend themselves and lock artists in longer than expected. That's why so many people online started saying the real lesson here ain't even about Finesse specifically anymore. It's about young artists signing paperwork too fast before understanding how labels actually move behind the scenes once money starts flowing. From the way the situation is being described, the label allegedly controls way more than just music releases too. People started pointing out clauses involving masters, image rights, merchandise, branding, endorsements, and long-term percentages tied to the artist's name itself. That's why folks online started saying this sounds bigger than a simple rap deal disagreement. If the label touches your music, your likeness, your merch, and outside income streams too, then escaping that structure becomes way more complicated than fans realize. And that's exactly why this story started blowing up everywhere. The automatic extension part especially had people reacting crazy online, because a lot of artists don't even understand how serious that wording becomes until years later. By the time success finally arrives, The deal may already be extending itself automatically based on release obligations and distribution activity. Then if there's a 360 structure involved, labels can potentially collect from touring, shows, merch, sponsorships, and multiple revenue lanes connected to the artist brand. That's why so many people listening started saying Finesse may have signed away way more control than he realized while trying to rebuild his career after prison. And honestly, hearing Finesse talk about it made the situation sound even heavier because he admitted he already knew labels usually aren't fully in an artist's best interest before he even signed. But according to him, the relationship felt deeper than business. He said he built trust with Junior while still locked up, talking from a prison bunk, believing they were building genuine loyalty and mentorship. That emotional side changes everything because now it's not just paperwork being questioned. It's trust between people who supposedly built a bond before the contract was ever finalized. That's why Finesse keeps bringing up loyalty so much whenever he speaks on the situation. He explained that because they presented themselves as black independent businessmen and preached family-style loyalty, he believed they were going to teach him a game instead of simply profit off him. He even admitted it could have been somebody like Master P, and he probably would have trusted that situation too because he wanted guidance, not just business. And honestly, that's the part a lot of people relate to emotionally. Sometimes comfort and familiarity make people lower their guard without realizing how serious the paperwork actually is. But at the same time, a lot of people online also feel like Finesse has to take some accountability too. Because no matter how comfortable the situation feels, contracts are still contracts at the end of the day. Blind trust in anybody, whether they come from your community or not, can turn dangerous fast once millions of dollars enter the picture. And that's one of the biggest conversations this whole situation sparked online. Business doesn't automatically become safe just because somebody talks like family or comes from a similar background. Finesse himself even admitted he understands taking losses in life. He said he's been through prison, hardship, and struggle already, so losing money alone doesn't scare him anymore. But according to him, this situation feels different because he feels blocked creatively and professionally while trying to move forward. That's why he keeps repeating that he simply wants out instead of constantly talking about lawsuits or revenge. From his perspective, it sounds like freedom matters more than trying to win some giant public battle at this point. Then the conversation turned toward possible loopholes and termination scenarios. The AI explanation suggested that if a label continuously delays releases, refuses approvals, blocks recording activity, or prevents an artist from fulfilling obligations, there could potentially be legal arguments for termination. But even then, everybody acknowledged situations like this are dangerous because labels have lawyers, money, leverage, and entire systems already built around protecting contracts. So even if an artist feels morally right, that doesn't automatically mean escaping the paperwork becomes easy legally. That's really why this whole thing exploded online the way it did. It's bigger than just rap gossip now. Fans are watching an artist publicly learn painful business lessons in real time while fighting for control over his career. And the craziest part is, the more Finesse talks, the more divided the internet becomes. Some people think he got manipulated badly. Others think he signed paperwork without understanding it and now regrets it later. But either way, one thing everybody agrees on is this. The music industry can get real ugly once loyalty, contracts, money, and power all start colliding together at the same time. That's really how a lot of artists wake up years later staring at paperwork thinking, hold on, how did they end up controlling this much of my career? Because when everything first starts happening fast, most people only focus on the excitement. The money looks good, the chains look good, the lifestyle looks good, and suddenly it feels like everything you dreamed about is finally happening. But the dangerous part is, excitement can blind people from what's actually written in front of them. And once those signatures hit the paper, reality eventually catches up. At the end of the day, business is supposed to be about whoever brings the cleanest and smartest deal, period. It shouldn't matter what somebody looks like, where they're from, or how connected they seem online. If somebody genuinely supports your community and brings fair business too, cool, salute that. But the contract still has to make sense. Because a lot of artists get emotionally attached to the idea of loyalty before they fully understand the business side. And that's exactly how people end up shocked later once the real numbers start getting exposed behind the scenes. That's the point Finesse2Tymes keeps trying to make throughout this whole situation. According to him, he wasn't just chasing a deal. He thought he was building with people he trusted as men. He keeps saying his decisions came from loyalty and faith more than greed. But now, looking back, he feels like that trust got used against him in ways he didn't understand at the time. And honestly, hearing him explain it makes the whole thing sound less like regular industry drama and more like somebody realizing too late how serious the paperwork really was. Then he started bringing up specific examples that really had the internet reacting. One story that stood out heavy was him talking about paying $30,000 out of his own pocket for a music video with DaBaby and not realizing the label was supposedly supposed to cover that cost. According to Finesse, he paid for the video himself while people around him already knew he technically shouldn't have been the one fronting that money. And once he learned later how those situations normally work in the industry, that frustration clearly stayed with him. What made the clip go even crazier online was when he specifically mentioned Jay Prince Jr. allegedly being present while the payment happened. Finesse basically said, "Y'all watch me spend my own money knowing I didn't fully understand the business." And from his perspective, that became symbolic of the bigger issue, not just losing money, but feeling like nobody stopped him even though they understood the game better than he did. That's why his frustration sounds so personal now, because he feels like guidance was promised but never fully delivered. At the same time, though, Finesse also admitted something important that a lot of people respected. He openly said he understands he still signed the contract himself. He admitted he should have read deeper, gotten stronger legal advice, and educated himself better before agreeing to anything. But then he immediately followed that up by saying people shouldn't clown somebody for being loyal or trusting black businessmen they believe would genuinely help teach them the industry. And honestly, that part sparked huge debates online because people understand both sides emotionally. Because the truth is, this exact story happens constantly in music. Artists see upfront money, jewelry, cars, videos, attention, and momentum building around their name, and naturally they start thinking, "I made it." In the beginning, everything feels exciting because the fame is rising fast, and everybody around you is celebrating the success. But later, once accountants, percentages, ownership splits, recoupment, and publishing breakdowns start entering the conversation, that's when things begin feeling completely different. Suddenly, the artist starts realizing the machine may have earned way more than they personally touched. That's why Finesse keeps stressing that getting emotional after the fact doesn't magically change paperwork. Once contracts are signed legally, the internet can't undo them. You can go online, expose situations, vent publicly, call people out, and turn public opinion against a label, but none of that automatically erases signatures on legally binding documents. And that's the hard truth a lot of young artists don't want to hear. Emotion and loyalty may matter personally, but courts usually care about paperwork first. That's really why the situation became way bigger than just one rapper arguing with a label online. A lot of people now see it as a warning for younger artists entering the business hungry and inexperienced. Because labels already know exactly when somebody is vulnerable. They know when an artist just came home from prison, needs money, wants momentum quickly, or feels pressure to capitalize on a hot moment before it disappears. That's usually when the family conversation starts sounding the strongest because emotions are high and desperation makes people easier to influence. And according to Finesse, that's exactly what happened to him. He admitted flat out that blind faith played a major role in where things ended up. He said he genuinely believed the relationship was bigger than business and that loyalty would protect him. But now he feels completely manipulated, even using words like bamboozled and hoodwinked while speaking emotionally about everything falling apart. The more he talked, the clearer it became that this situation isn't really about one bad moment anymore. It's years of frustration finally exploding publicly all at once. Then the conversation took an even darker turn once he started talking about management conflicts and how certain relationships behind the scenes allegedly never made sense to him afterward. He questioned how somebody connected directly to the label structure could also supposedly fight fully for his interests at the same time. From his perspective, he now sees those relationships as conflicts instead of protection. And that's where the emotional anger really started spilling over publicly, because he no longer believes the people around him ever truly represented him fairly. At one point, Finesse even admitted the situation reached a level where he no longer wants partnership or reconciliation at all. He said if he could avoid ever sitting across the table with those people again, he would. According to him, the trust is completely broken now. And honestly, once business disputes start turning emotional like that, things usually become way harder to repair because now pride, betrayal, and personal resentment all enter the picture alongside the money. Still, despite all the anger, he also kept repeating something important over and over again. He claims the issue isn't even really about being broke. He said he's still making money and still believes he can earn more. What he wants most is freedom to continue chasing his dream his own way without feeling boxed in creatively or financially. That's why he keeps framing the conversation around control and opportunity instead of simply screaming about money alone. To him, it sounds like ownership and independence matter more now than flashy advances ever did before. Then near the end, the whole thing almost started sounding spiritual the way he described it. He talked about karma, God, loyalty, and consequences, basically warning that situations built wrong eventually collapse on their own. Whether people agree with him or not, you can tell he genuinely believes he was done dirty. And once somebody reaches that emotional point publicly, it becomes hard to walk the situation back quietly because now the entire internet is emotionally invested in every update, every live stream, and every response. That's why people keep comparing the situation to other artists who leaned heavily into YouTube and direct-to-fan platforms, when never label problems slowed traditional releases down. Because if his contract still leaves room for independent content, streaming, and outside engagement, then he may still have ways to keep momentum alive even while fighting through the legal side. But if a true 360 structure is involved, even outside income streams could become complicated depending on how the deal is written. And that's exactly why this whole thing keeps getting messier every single week online.